Hello there folks, my name is Spoonks and welcome back to another episode of Box Office Chat. This is the show where I break down the top 5 domestic box office results, see where each movie landed, and see how well each movie did, so let's get started. Number 5 was Scream 6, making $3.4 million this weekend, adding to a domestic total of $103 million and a worldwide total of $161 million. Another solid weekend for Scream 6, as it is now the first horror film of the year to surpass $100 million domestically. Very well done. And it has now officially become the highest grossing film in the Scream franchise. It was able to surpass the first Scream by just around $900,000, which is incredible, and it's looking like it's going to continue that trend domestically, and it may even get to that point worldwide, as it's already identical to the worldwide total of Scream 3 and is roughly $12 to $13 million away from Scream 2 and the first Scream's worldwide totals. We'll see if it can get there, but hey, the fact that it was able to become the highest grossing film in the franchise domestically before it leaves the top 5 is outstanding and a remarkable feat to surpass, and I'm very happy to see it. So yeah, Scream 6, well, this is probably one of, if not the last time we see it. It ended on a significant high note, and I could not be any more happier to see it go out with a bang quite like this. Good job. Number 4 was Dungeons & Dragons, making $13 million this weekend, adding to a domestic total of $61 million and a worldwide total of $123 million. Unfortunately, folks, this film had quite the steep drop-off. It wasn't as catastrophic as Ant-Man or Shazam, but it still fell 63% in its second weekend. That is not a good hold. I definitely feel like its release date was a big factor to this, as last weekend, its opening weekend, was very promising. It had a much better than expected opening weekend. I'm sorry if you can hear the rain outside. It's been very stormy over here, but back on topic, yeah. Word of mouth was very strong, and it seemed like it was going to be one of the bigger sleeper hits, but I do think if they stuck it with its original release date on March 10th, then I think this movie would have done a bit better. But this still isn't a huge disaster, as it is roughly less than $30 million away from surpassing its $150 million budget worldwide, so that's something. You cannot deny it. At least it'll be able to surpass its initial budget, so there's that, I guess. And it certainly should at least break through the cusp of the $100 million barrier domestically. I can definitely see that happening, but unfortunately it doesn't seem like it's going to be as big of a sleeper hit as we thought. The marketing wasn't the best, and it just suffered way too much from stiff competition and just a bad release date overall, unfortunately. Again, I don't think it's going to be terrible. It's not going to be a horrific catastrophe, but it still has an uphill battle to get through. It surprised us for sure, and who knows, maybe it may pick up some steam eventually, but yeah, unfortunately it's not looking like it's going to be that big of a hit. Number 3 was Air, making $14.45 million this weekend, and adding the 5-day numbers, that adds to a domestic total of $20 million and a worldwide total of $30 million. So this movie definitely continued the trend of movie skewing to an older audience, having a much better than expected opening. This had obviously a much better than expected opening for me. I wasn't expecting it to hit 20 million by the end of the 5-day weekend, yet here we are. It shows that the marketing definitely pulled off, and it definitely pulled an audience for sure. And this isn't a horrible opening given the source material and the competition it was facing off, and I am very curious to see how it legs out, how strong its weekend by weekend drop-offs are, especially with the A cinema score it got. The downside is, however, that this movie has a budget of $90 million. I'm not sure why they gave this movie, of all things, that big of a budget, but hey, I'm not Amazon. So like Dungeons & Dragons, despite it being much, much more cheaper, it definitely has somewhat of an uphill battle getting to the doubling point. We'll see if it can get to that milestone, hopefully worldwide. But yeah, this isn't a too bad opening weekend. This isn't a disaster by any means, but it's definitely going to be interesting to see where this movie goes from this point forward. Number 2 was John Wick Chapter 4, making $14.46 million this weekend, adding to a domestic total of $146 million and a worldwide total of $270 million. That's right, folks. The race between the second and third place spots was so close that there was a $10,000 difference between the two of them. This is honestly one of the most surprising things about this weekend. The most surprising we'll get to in a moment. But yeah, just like I predicted last week, John Wick was able to have a much better hold than the previous weekend, just falling 48%, which, given the competition, that's pretty serviceable. And again, the fact that this was able to come out on top with just over $10,000 is quite insane. The fact that people are still rushing out to go see this movie, the fact that the word of mouth is still very strong, and it's still continuing to be one of the biggest hits in the franchise. It's just roughly $30 million away from surpassing the $300 million milestone. I think it'll get there for sure. It's pretty much guaranteed to surpass $150 million domestically as well. And even with the small bump in the road it suffered last weekend, I do believe it will still be able to surpass the previous John Wick film, both domestically and worldwide. Of course, I could be proven wrong here, but I'm gonna remain confident on this one. It's still early in its theatrical run, and I still think it's gonna have one of the leggier runs out of everything out right now. So yeah, much better weekend than last weekend for John Wick, and the movie continues to be one of the biggest hits of the year already. It's looking like it's back on track to being one of the biggest films in the franchise. And finally, let's end the video off with the number 1 movie of the weekend, which was the Super Mario Brothers movie, making $146 million this weekend just for the 3-day weekend. When we add the 5-day numbers, that adds to a domestic total of $204 million and a worldwide total of $377 million. Folks, there is a lot to break down with this opening, so bear with me. Obviously, this is the biggest opening weekend for a family film this year, as well as the biggest opening weekend for an animated film this year because, well, it's the first one of its kind to come out. But otherwise, it is the biggest opening weekend of the year in general, topping Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, John Wick Chapter 4, Creed 3, and Scream 6. It is the biggest opening weekend for any movie based off of a video game, topping Sonic the Hedgehog 2, Sonic the Hedgehog, Pokemon, Detective Pikachu, and Uncharted. It is Illumination's biggest opening weekend ever, topping Minions, The Rise of Gru, The Secret Life of Pets, and Despicable Me 2. On the domestic side of things, it is the second biggest opening weekend for an animated film behind Incredibles 2, but it was able to top Finding Dory, Frozen 2, and Shrek the Third, believe it or not. But on the worldwide side of things, it has become the biggest opening weekend for an animated film ever, topping Frozen 2, Toy Story 4, Incredibles 2, and Ice Age: Dawn of the Dinosaurs as well. Folks, these numbers are, to simply put it, outstanding. I don't think anyone, even those with the highest of expectations, were expecting this movie to open to these types of numbers. Even me. I was expecting this movie to crush it. Hell, I was even expecting it to top Quantumania, but I was not expecting these kind of numbers. These are huge, completely unexpected. The fact that it was able to top Frozen 2 worldwide is absolutely insane. I am at a shock here, not in a bad way, mind you. This is incredible. And even with it being Illumination's most expensive film to date, the first one to get at the very least $100 million, it has already tripled that budget worldwide, and it is definitely gonna make a huge amount of profit for pretty much everyone involved. I don't see how anyone could be upset at these numbers. This is huge, and given the strong word of mouth from audiences, it received an A cinema score. I think this movie is going to have very strong legs, as April doesn't seem to be as big as March. Not saying there aren't any movies that are probably going to do well. It's just not going to be as busy as March's release output was. And also, it is pretty much the only family animated film out in theaters right now, as the next family movie, The Little Mermaid, doesn't come out till Memorial Day weekend, and the next animated film, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, doesn't come out till June 2nd, so plenty of time. Word of mouth is very strong. The marketing and buzz was even stronger as well. This movie is off to a fantastic start, and it's looking like it's going to have an incredible run at the box office, so much so that some people are even saying it could end up becoming the biggest movie of the year. I think it might be a little early to say that. There could still be a couple surprises here and there, but hey, I'm not arguing against that. I definitely can see that as a possibility too. So yeah, overall, an absolutely outstanding opening weekend for the Super Mario Brothers movie. I can't wait to see where it goes from here. And those were your top 5 domestic box office results for this weekend, but we're not quite done yet, as we've got another week ahead of us and new movies hitting theaters. And this weekend we have 2 new wide releases, the first being The Pope's Exorcist. This is a new horror film based off of the stories of Father Gabriel Amorth. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. If I mispronounced, I apologize. And I'm going to be honest, I don't have very high expectations for this. I know it's a horror movie, and it's probably on the cheaper side, so it'll probably still be successful, but I just don't see this being a massive hit like Megan or Scream 6. The marketing has been there, but I wouldn't call it necessarily great. The buzz is also not particularly great. Don't know too many people talking about this movie, and reviews so far are very mixed right now. Maybe leaning a bit more on the positive side, but still pretty mixed. So yeah, I'm not really sure about if this movie's gonna be one of the bigger horror hits of the year, sadly. And then there's Renfield, a new horror comedy from Universal about Dracula's assistant not wanting to work for Dracula. And while I think this will do better than Pope's Exorcist, I'm not too sure about how this movie's gonna do either. The marketing so far has been very solid. I've been seeing a lot of promotion and ads for it all over the place, sure, and reviews so far are very positive. Critics are seeming to really like this movie. The downside is, however, is the buzz. I'm not hearing a lot of people talk about this movie the way I think the studio wants people to talk about it. Just not too many people I know have been talking about it or are aware that this movie is coming out, sadly. I don't see the buzz like I did for stuff like Violent Night or Megan or Cocaine Bear, and that's what's really going to hold this back. Granted, it could still overperform, it could still exceed expectations. I mean, people had low expectations for Cocaine Bear and Megan and Violent Night, and those were able to exceed those. So maybe there's a chance this one does that as well, but I'm going to keep my expectations low for this one, sadly. But we'll see how well this movie truly does, as well as the rest of the movies that land in the top 5 on the next Box Office Chat. And that's going to do it for this week's episode of Box Office Chat. What did you all think of the results? Were you satisfied? Unsatisfied? Comment down below and let me know. If you like this video, hit the like button. If you like this channel, hit the subscribe button. Follow me on all the social media links right there. And until next time, everyone, stay sharp.